Well, it looks like for the most part, we have staff who have already heard this presentation several times. But let's go ahead and get started. It is being recorded, so I'll have to send it out to the people that missed it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can begin. That's not the screen I wanted to share. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. And please don't think me rude for not looking at you, but the PowerPoint's on a different screen. So this is just to go over the DOL fiduciary rule and its implementation, which has to begin on July 1st, 2022. I want to talk about the fact that it has to be fully implemented, that advisors are fiduciaries under the 40 Act and the DOL rule, and that this affects both SEC registered advisors and state registered advisors. The DOL supervises or requires everyone to meet this rule. Now, this rule focuses on rollovers, and the DOL defines rollovers in several ways and says they are prohibited transactions. So basically they're saying, if you recommend to a client that they move their 401k plan to an IRA, you have just committed a prohibited transaction. The rollover definitions you can see here: plan to IRA, plan to plan, commission-based to fee-based, and vice versa, IRA to a plan, which I believe is very rare, and IRA to IRA. Then what the government does is they give you an out. They give you an exemption for the prohibited transaction. As long as you do one of these things, then you have earned, if for lack of a better word, the exemption. You qualify for the exemption. Now, when we talked before, there were three kinds of exemptions. One was unsolicited rollovers. The second was providing education about rollovers. And the third was a full rollover recommendation that has to include costs and compensation, services, and conflicts of interest. Now, the asterisk here is related to a survey that Bob Veras did of the subscribers of his magazine, Inside Information. And they believe, and have changed my mind with what they discussed, that providing educational materials is not enough to meet this exemption. So Bob asked two questions in his survey. One was, what should the document look like? And the second was, what should it include? So he had 25 very detailed responses, and some of them were commonalities, but there was no consensus on any of the points. And there was only one respondent that believed that providing education only is an acceptable way to qualify for the exemption. The other 24, their opinion was, you are acting as fiduciary to your client in every other capacity in your relationship with them. So to say, I can just provide them education and not act as a fiduciary in this transaction just doesn't hold water. You will, if you're a fiduciary for them, then you would do this as a fiduciary as well. So let me just review the requirements of the rule. There's language that you needed to put in your ADV that basically says that you are a fiduciary under Title I of the ERISA Act and the Internal Revenue Code. We have included that both in the document that we're going to require and in our ADV brochures. And that had to be done at the end of January, and we took care of that. So the next step is that you are required to do a cost comparison between an old account or plan and what the rollover will be. Now, the cost comparison should include current investment fees, commissions, sales charges, and expense ratios from the existing plan. TPA charges, sponsoring companies, administration, custodial fees, individual service fees, and then fees associated with the account that you would manage with us. Now, this cost comparison, as you can imagine, is going to be difficult because, you know, there isn't just one place where you can find all of this information. So the DOL, in their infinite wisdom, said that the best way to collect the data is to ask the client or the prospective client for permission to log on to the employer's website and get the information there. Well, first of all, if you log on to the public side, it's very likely that they will not provide the information there. And if what they're suggesting is that you log in with the client's credentials, that's a violation of the First Affirmative's custody policy and probably the custody policy of everyone else. So you can also ask clients for recent statements or a plan disclosure document. Though most of the respondents to Bob's survey said they have never seen a plan disclosure document. So that's pretty unlikely that you would get that. So as I said, most of these things that you're being asked to look at aren't going to give you all of the information you need to provide to the client so that you can do so that they have all the information to make an informed decision. So the respondents mentioned a section of the rule which I frankly didn't look at as specifically as I should have because I was focusing on the other things that we needed to do. But the rule says that it does not require a detailed cost and services comparison. What it requires is a good faith effort to identify those costs and services. So a client can opt out of providing the documents that you request. And if they do that, then, and you have discussed with them that if you've asked them for the documents and they say, we don't want to take the time to collect all of this stuff, they can opt out, but you have to make the good faith effort of asking for the documents. Most of the respondents in the survey said that it's pretty much the norm with the clients that they have done beta testing with, that they don't want to collect all the documents. In fact, the respondents said that for whatever reason, clients have decided before they come to you that they want to roll over their retirement plan 100% of the time, and they don't particularly care about the fee piece. So on the checklist that I created, and if you remember from last time, I created 3 checklists, one for an unsolicited rollover, one for an education only rollover and one that included all of the cost comparison, et cetera. I have consolidated that down into one document so that so that everything is just in one place and you don't have to choose between documents. And I put in two opt-out paragraphs. One says, I want my advisor or potential advisor to help me roll over my assets. They haven't made a recommendation, but this is what I want. And the second opt-out is that they don't want to take the time necessary to gather the information from their own records. Now, I think if you review the rule, the DOL is really geared more toward large 401ks because frankly, it's easier to get the information on a large 401k than it is on a smaller one. You can go on the internet and you can find a 5,500 for IBM, but you probably can't find that for your 6-person plan. So, the DOL makes it difficult, and the DOL's focus is that they really would like to see people leave their accounts in plans as opposed to rolling over to IRAs. I don't know specifically why that's something that they want to do or want people to do, but it skews that way. But like I said, most people, when they come to you, they want to roll over their IRA, they want to roll over their plan or existing IRA. And so, you just need to take the next steps into getting them, getting the information you need so that you can prove to the DOL that you've done the required things to qualify for the exemption. So what I included, and this was something else that one of the respondents to Bob Veris's survey recommended, is I have a checklist in the document that lists benefits and services of ERISA retirement plans versus IRA rollovers. And each of the benefits and services has a space for the client to rate each category by its importance. And so if they go through and I'll show you the spreadsheet in a moment, or the checklist in a moment, but if they go through this checklist and you see that what they really want is to be able to take loans, they want to have an employee match, they want to take advantage of pre-tax contributions, they're really leaning towards staying in their plan. Whereas if they choose the other side of the chart, then they're leaning more toward having moving into an IRA. And I see that there's a chat question. I'd like to get through this and then I will follow up with questions at the end. I made this presentation fairly short so that we have plenty of time for questions. So here are other data collection or data sources where you could get the information, hopefully, to provide to a client so that they can make an informed choice. There are services out there. I mean, we will provide hidden levers that can do a proposal that calculates expense ratios for current and proposed plans. And then there are other things out on the marketplace. Jim Frazen mentioned that FI360 has a product. There's subscription services where you can access Form 5500s. And there's something called investorcom.com, and it has a rollover analyzer. And it looks like a really good product, but they don't disclose a cost without a demo. And since that's not the direction we're going, I didn't take the time to do the demo. What we offer is the hidden levers proposal. And that really only compares the cost, not the services. So you're going to have to do that as a separate information gathering. So now you have to get down to the comparison. And when you, in the cost comparison section, there will be a checkbox that says client did not provide the information. And there's also a place where you can list the costs in a chart. The second section is estimated costs for the proposed rollover. And there is also a chart there to list the range of costs. But now we get into a timing issue, because the DOL expects you to discuss with your client whether or not you recommend a rollover for them, or they want to move forward with a rollover. That needs to be done before you start talking to them about an investment option. And so that really makes the process difficult, because if you use hidden levers, you need to know which program you want to put the client in. And you're not supposed to be doing that part until the client has agreed to do a rollover. So it's really a catch-22. I wanted to focus on one other thing. If the client says they don't want to gather the information needed so that they can do an apples to apples comparison, you have to, at the end of whatever document, say that you cannot recommend that a rollover is in the client's best interest. If you don't have all the information, then there's no way to justify that it's in the client's best interest. Now, you can get around that, of course, because clients don't have to accept your recommendation. They can move forward regardless. But you need to keep in mind that you can't, without some serious explaining. I don't know that I could come up with language to explain to the DOL why, without all the information, I made the decision that the client, that it was in the client's best interest to do a rollover. The next section then has a box that says, I believe this is in the client's best interest, or I don't believe that this is in the client's best interest. And then you have to sign off on your recommendation. Then you have another signature block where the client makes their decision, and they can accept or decline your recommendation. So if they say, you've told me it's not in my best interest, thank you for your time, I'm going to leave it where it is. They have to sign and acknowledge that. If they say, you have said it's not in my best interest, but I want to move forward with you anyway, you should do that. In both sections, well, in the advisor recommendation section, there's an area where you can explain why you made the recommendation that you made. And that can include that you didn't have all the information available to you. You could even say that the client didn't want to provide the information to you. So as long as there's some kind of explanation there, that will help the SEC or whoever's looking at the document determine that, why you made the decision that you made. So now we have to look at implementation. And so you need to change, you're going to have to change your processes a little bit. As always, when you have a new client, I'll talk about new clients specifically. But if you have a new client, you have to give them all the correct disclosures, our ADV brochure, a RAP fee brochure, if applicable, Form CRS, and you'll have to give that to them, whether they're a new client or an old client. The privacy policy, the IAR supplement, if that is applicable, and you need to provide it for our firm and for yours. So let's talk a little bit about that. For our IARs, they have to use the document that we're providing. For firms that are independent, you can use the documents that we're providing here. You don't have to, but you have to provide us something that showed that you complied with the DOL rule and were eligible for the PTE or prohibited transaction exemption. If you're with a larger firm, like a firm that's associated with a broker dealer or a large RIA, they may have documents that they want you to complete, and copies of those to us would be sufficient. They are the ones that supervise you in that case. And so you have to follow their guidelines. You don't have to follow ours. We will be providing this recommendation document to you. And we're going to send it to you in a fillable PDF format as well as a Word document. And we're doing that so that you can white label it if that's what you want, and you can make changes to it. We're just trying to help you meet the requirements of this rule. So as I said, only IARs have to use these documents. If you're not an IAR and you want to come up with whatever you want to use on your own, that's fine. But you are going to have to provide that information to us beginning on July 1st. And you should check with your supervisory firm to see what they require, so that you can attach whatever it is prior to the pre-IPS and the pre-IPS case. So unfortunately, I have to make Steve and his team, our service team, the bouncers at the door, and they can't let you in to open a new account until that document is received. So now, does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Kathy, there's a question in chat.
Okay.
It's from Alan Moskowitz. He says, where can we find the 5,500 information on large plans? I had my daughter ask for the 404C document, but they only gave her part of the information. So all costs were not fully disclosed.
Okay. That's a big part of the problem with this rule, Alan, is that there is no specific one document that's going to give you all the information you need. The 404C will have some information, but not all of it. There was one of the slides, which I'll be sending out, has a list of other places that you can look. I think you can go to the IBM website and you can find their 5,500. I don't know that for sure, but I do know that there are services that you can, of course, pay for that will give you a database of 5,500s. I have no idea what the cost on that might be. Anything else?
I do have a question. So how often the plan, what do you call it? The summary plan document that might include the cost, how often is that given to the employees? Once a year typically?
They are supposed to get a lot of these documents once a year. The summary plan document, like I said, the people that responded to the survey that Bob Veras did
Mhm.
said finding one of those documents is like a black swan event. They're really hard to find.
Right.
And so apparently they are not something that is required for for employers to provide to their client, to their employees. They are required to send out quarterly statements, 404As -5s, Form 5500s if they're required to file them. But as you can see, some of that stuff is going to have service information, what services are provided. Some of that information will have costs for those services. And there's probably nothing that has all of that information in one place. So this is a difficult job to complete.
Okay, so you don't know of any free like online source for Form 5500?
I do not know. There might be, but I do not know of it.
Okay, because I thought I remembered from a long time ago that there was something like that, but that it might only be for like nonprofits or something like that. I don't know.
Well, that's possible. But again, I did not do a lot of research on where you can find this information. It's but unfortunately, that's what the DOL wants us to do. And I think that's why in the language, it doesn't say they require it. They say good faith effort.
Yeah.
Because they really, if you can't find the information, you can't find the information.
Right.
I'm going to pull over here to my screen the checklist that I created. And like I said, this is going to be turned into a fillable document. It's got a lot of information on it. It's got the disclosures that I mentioned, information on the client. There's also a section to include where the client tells you the reason they're considering doing a rollover. I think this is good information to have as you move forward with the client. The next section, as I said, I don't believe that education alone can be a reason to recommend that they do a rollover. However, I think you have to do the education. So I included a lot of information about, what happens if you do a retirement plan to another retirement plan, what your options are, when you leave a previous employer, can you leave the money there? If you go to a new employer, can you roll it over? Or you can take it as cash, but you as the advisor need to explain the tax consequences of that. So there are a couple of pages of information on the different kinds of rollovers and the options that the clients have with those rollovers. Now we get to the checklist itself. And this is the section where I said, I listed out benefits and services. These are some of the benefits of an ERISA plan. These are some of the benefits of an IRA rollover. And I put in that the client should, 1 for not important, 10 for very important. And, this I think will give you some kind of a guide on what the client's real interests are. Then in this section, I listed again the various documents that you could use to gather information. If you find any of these documents, then you should check them off or other. And then here is the disclaimer or the opt-out language that the client doesn't want to spend the time to find that information. I missed one opt-out right back here up at the top. At the beginning of the document, it says, I want to do a rollover. My advisor didn't recommend it. And so they could start there. But most of the people who did the survey for Bob Veras thought, yes, people can check off that they want to do it regardless, but it's probably best to go through the checklist with the client anyway. This is just a list of the paperwork or documents that contain the information that we provide to our clients about the costs for an IRA rollover. And then what I did here, because of the timing issue. So say you want to make a recommendation to a client, but you have to do this part first. So what I did was I put in the range of fees for our different, to cover all of our different programs, so that even though you're not giving the client an absolute number on what they would be paying for the IA rollover, you can give them a range of how much it's going to cost them. And then here is a section where you can check off the services that are provided by the old plan and the new. I left a lot of areas open so that you can add information. I don't believe that, it needs to be filled, but I wanted to make sure that there were enough boxes so that if there were other services provided under the plan or under a nonprofit or whatever, that information, you had a place to put the information. And finally, here's the last page, or the signature page. And, it's just a very simple question. Based on the information that I have, is it or isn't it in the client's best interest to do a rollover? And here's the explanation of why I made that recommendation. And then the client down here can say, I want to move forward or I don't want to move forward. And as I said, the survey itself that Bob Veras did, the majority of clients that they beta tested wanted to do it anyway, regardless, and they didn't want to spend the time collecting documentation. So, when it comes down to it, if you look at it that way with those stipulations in mind, this seems like a big old waste of time. But it's something that's required, and we hope that this information that I've provided here is helpful for you in figuring out what you want to do, so that on July 1st, you have something to use and you have a process in place. So are there any other questions?
Kathy, hey, Bruce Herbert up in Seattle. What an astonishing amount of work you've done. And I just thank you. Can't believe seeing all this together. I have three kind of questions or comments. One is, I know that I've heard before that ESG as it by itself is not a qualifying reason for,
right.
But I'm thinking of putting that into our document anyway, just in addition, just to kind of document that and have it there. And I'm wondering, and maybe this last page that you have up starts to get at it, but I'm wondering if very often we get a rollover from somebody who's an existing client, so they just want to add that part to what we're already doing, so as to have an easier time of have it be consolidated, right, and related quality, hopefully, that comes from advice and cohesive planning. And I'm wondering if documenting that, if that actually might rise to a level of respectability, quote unquote, in the eyes of the DOL, where just documenting it might be useful. And the third thing before is, I'm wondering if there has been any sort of group effort or group aggregation around trying to track DOL interpretations, as people actually get audited or whatever the process would be, so we can have a feedback mechanism of actual data of DOL interpretations around these things. Thank you again so very much.
Sure, Bruce. On your first question, you're right. ESG is not considered by the DOL to be a service. They see it as a preference. So you could list that the client prefers to have ESG considered in their portfolio, but don't refer to it as a service. And I think that is fine if you want to include it. Just make sure that where you're referring to it is clear that you're not thinking of it as a service. I think that the box on the first page where it says, I want to roll my account over regardless, it fits with clients who are wanting to consolidate their assets. So, right now you manage everything for them except their 401k. They leave their job. Makes perfect sense that they're going to want to move their 401k money to you. So in that kind of case, the client could check the box at the beginning that says, I want to roll over my assets regardless. And you could put that in your explanation at the end of the document. And your third question, with the SEC, if you subscribe to some of the compliance magazines, etc., they share, the compliance officers share among themselves document request lists that they get from when they're audited. I don't know if the DOL is going to do the same thing. The SEC has said that they will not be monitoring advisors when they audit them to see if they're following the DOL rule, but that it's pretty likely that if they see you're not, they're going to let the DOL know. So, it is important that you have the documentation that you need. But for now, Bruce, I don't know if they're going to collect have a list of things that the DOL is looking for. Now, I have one other thing to say, and then Teresa has something to add. I don't know if you all saw the proposed rule by the SEC with regard to ESG. Yes, I read all 362 pages, and it the comment period just started, and I know that USCIF is looking at writing a comment letter. There are a number of other places that are going to do the same. It's going to be interesting how the final rule falls out. And this came out from a Democratic-led commission. So if the control of Congress and the White House and therefore the SEC changes in November, this rule could go out the window. We don't know, but it's something to know that it's on the horizon and will probably go into effect. If it goes all the way through, it'll go into effect sometime late 2023. So now I'd like to turn it over to Teresa, and I'm going to stop sharing.
First, thank you, Kathy. I would like to echo Bruce's comment. Tremendous amount of work, and I think everyone should really appreciate having a checklist, because just having all that stuff would have been completely overwhelming. What I wanted to mention is that we are about to undertake phase 3 of our managed mutual fund model transition. And during this phase, we will be focused on transitioning several of the global and international strategies in the fund. I'm bringing this up now because as part of that, we had planned to move out of the position in Nextex, which is Shelton Green Alpha, a strategy that many of you are extremely familiar with. We got a call from Shelton earlier this week. I think it was on Monday, we had a call with them. And they let us know that Green Alpha has resigned as the sub-advisor to Nextex, effective 60 days from now. Now, again, we were planning on eliminating this strategy from our portfolio anyway, but to me, this makes that change more urgent. And the way that we've been moving our managed mutual fund models is that we have been trading the tax exempt accounts simultaneously. And then, as any of you who have managed mutual fund accounts outstanding know, sending you a spreadsheet with an analysis of the capital gains that your clients would be responsible for if you move forward with those trades. I would strongly recommend that we proceed with trading Nextex as soon as possible. And I say that because the sub-advisor, Green Alpha, who all of you know, has resigned. That means there is likely to be a very significant change in the strategy at the time that it's transitioned. Shelton has not even identified a new portfolio management team yet. So a new portfolio management team has to be identified, and that transition has to take place. In my experience, when there is a transition of this magnitude, the turnover in the account is significant. The Morningstar ratings collapse, and you're just left with something that's very different than what you started with. So I would recommend that in both tax deferred and taxable accounts, we move forward. However, there are large gains in Nextex, and we will leave it to you to let us know if you would like us to trade those accounts. Just please look at the gains for your clients. If you want us to trade, we'll just go ahead and trade. If not, we will follow the normal process, and you'll get a spreadsheet detailing the gains associated with them. Does anybody have any questions on what I just said? Okay, I guess I was very clear. Or nobody cares. So anyway, with that, I'll just turn back to Kathy and she'll wrap up the meeting.
Okay. I think that's all I have. I'm a little disappointed in the turnout because I need to provide this information to everyone. So tell your friends. It is being recorded, so I will send it out and send out the PowerPoint as well as the recommendation checklist. Lucky Jen has to take the document and put in all the fillable boxes. But once she's done with that, we'll have the PDF to move forward with, and we'll get that out to you too. So thank you all for joining.
Kathy,
Yes,
I do have one more question. I know I sound like Columbo, but so with hidden levers, is it primarily the like underlying like expense ratios? Is that the cost that they provide?
yes.
Okay, but not anything other than that.
No, they don't contain like TPA costs or record keeping costs, none of that.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Uh-huh. All right, so thank you all, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again,
Bye-bye.
very, very much.